Church, open your Bibles. We are going to be back in the Psalms again today. I really sense, a sweet spirit this morning. Just felt good to be together, especially in this anniversary of our country's time, our birthday, as it were. And I'm excited, obviously, we're going to be back in the Psalms again today. I want to thank the last two who have preached from the Psalms. Jason Lowe was in Psalm 46 and did an outstanding job in that 2 weeks ago. And then our own Pastor Casey was up last week in Psalm 19. I very much enjoyed his exuberance. If you were here, he did a fantastic job with that psalm, and I really enjoyed some of the stories that he told too, especially about his grandpa. So that will kind of stick with me about God revealing himself and the examples he gave in the scriptures. Well, I have been arguing all along that these psalms, these books in the scriptures are there for us to tell us about ancient worship in Israel. This was the worship, this was the stuff that they used in order to come before the Lord, and sometimes they sang these psalms that we read today. Sometimes they recited them, sometimes they just listened to those that were said over them, but this was the body of work or the body of literature that they used in order to drive their worship. One other thing about the psalm today that you need to know is it fits within all the Psalms, 150 of them. This is a little subset, and this is a subset of Psalms that were called Psalms of Ascent. And I have a little picture here that might help us. If you are in Israel in the ancient world, then you are going to Jerusalem, and you're doing that several times for holidays, for celebrations, and wherever you're coming from Israel, you are ascending as you go up to the city on a hill. And so these Psalms of Ascent, numbering 120 to 134, so 14 of them, are all Psalms that are attributed to this march that you would take on the way to Israel or the way to Jerusalem. And so that's why they're called the Psalms of Ascent, because you would sing them or recite them on your way to these holy days. Now, I want you to think in your head, what are maybe some things that you do with your kids in the car, songs you might sing. And you might sing a song like, "The wheels on the bus go round and round." Or you might sing, "Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O." And those just stick with you, right? Well, the Psalms of Ascent are going to be like that. They're going to be the ones that you sing all the time as you're marching up towards Jerusalem. And they're going to be, with a religious tone to them, they're going to be the songs that your family knows. And so again, this Psalm of Ascent fits within this category. The psalm today is simple, it's personal, and it is short. In fact, it is so short, I had no idea that we were going to say so much scripture this morning, but we're going to do that again because this psalm is so short. One of the shortest in all of the psalms. And so I want you to stand in reverence and honor for God. This is something ancient Israelites would have done too. They would have honored the scriptures. And I've got the scriptures up here. Psalm 131, a song of ascents of David. And I want you to read this out loud with gusto with me. Here we go. "My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. But I have calmed and quieted myself. I'm like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore." Great job. Have a seat. Well, I have no idea what you did for the celebrations of our country yesterday, the 250th birthday of our country. By the way, I still remember 200, the bicentennial, and that was a big deal, I can tell you, back 50 years ago. But here we are, fast forward to this time, and I have no idea what you did yesterday. I was at the Edmonds Parade. Raise your hand if you made your way to the Edmonds Parade yesterday. Maybe half of us. I want to show you, this was the opening of the parade, and two beautiful young ladies brought the banner through that said an Edmonds kind of 4th of July parade, and they have been doing this, I had no idea, since 1907. Now, again, I have no idea what you did yesterday, but chances are good. Something that you did was related to the celebration of our country. I know, for instance, back if you were in Washington, D.C., there was reportedly the biggest fireworks show ever done was done on the mall yesterday. I would show you pictures, but I don't think that can capture the moment, right? If you've seen fireworks, you got to be there and really see the expanse of them. I will say this, one thing that they did this weekend, and they've done in the past, something really cool, is they take images now and put them onto the Washington Monument. I have one of the Washington monuments, the light up, as it were, that they shown off the reflecting pool and into the 250th onto the Washington Monument. I think that's cool. There's one other one I have to show you here, and it is the image of our founding fathers that are projected onto the Washington Monument. And again, there's images. I've tried to blow them up so you can see them, but Ben Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and their images are put onto the side of that. I thought that was rather cool. Now, again, I have no idea what you did yesterday, but chances are good you were a part of something that was big and exhilarating and jubilant, and those are very appropriate. Those are things that you should be doing. And again, this is a part of a celebration of our country. But I'm here to tell you today that the psalm here today is really the opposite of that. Now, it's not as if David didn't have some big moments, right? I mean, David's the king after all. David had the moment in which he slayed Goliath. That's a big moment. David has the moment in which he conquers other nations. He has the moment in which he takes the city Jebus and turns it into Jerusalem. So he's got his accomplishments. But David goes to the other end of the spectrum in this psalm, and David is not going to be about the big and the loud moments. He's not going to be about the boisterous moments, although he has these. He's going to go to the other end of the spectrum, and he's going to talk about a quiet faith, a settled faith, a contented faith. And what he's saying is, what I want to talk to you about today, and faith is, it's quiet, it's tender. This is not the psalm where you go if you're in the midst of struggle. It's not the psalm you go if you have enemies. There are other psalms for that. But this is the psalm where you go if you're wanting to really say, Lord, I want to live out of a peacefulness. I want to live out of a contentedness. I have a quiet faith that says volumes if lived out the right way. And honestly, again, that's something I think that all of us want. All of us want to feel this sense of being settled, of being secure, of, as it were, feeling at home. And so what does a quiet faith look like? How do we know if we are exercising a quiet faith, one like David describes here? Well, we're going to let him explain to us what he means in order that we might also understand what a quiet faith looks like and be able to live out of that. Let's learn from David. First of all, David describes a quiet faith as humble. He describes it as humble. Now, I want you to note, you just read this psalm, and at no point does David say, I want to let you know I'm humble. No, that's not where he goes at this, as describing this. He goes the opposite direction and tells you what he is not. And so David says, I am not proud, and I am not one who has haughty eyes. I want to explain a little bit more of that because he's telling us a quiet faith is never synonymous with pride or with haughty eyes. Pride is, of course, one of the chief sins. It's the sin most attributed to Satan himself, and it's the base for many other sins. So if you've got pride, it springs up into a lot of other sins. Pride is self-centered. It's focused on what I can do. It's focused upon my way. As I thought about this psalm this week, I thought about a famous song that is oftentimes sung. In my mind, I'm hearing Frank Sinatra, and he says, I did it my way. And yes. That song, every time it is sung, I'm like, it's like the definition of pride, all right? My way, that's what I'm focused upon, the things that I can accomplish, the things that I can do. And David is saying, no, I don't think that's what really quiet faith is all about. In fact, David is saying, I think I've learned over time, he would say, that the best things in life are not the ones that I've accomplished. They're not the ones that I have gone and done something big in. The things that really are mattering in life are the things that somehow God has graced upon me. I possess them because I didn't do anything else, but God just blessed me with them. Or God used a collection of people around me to bless me with those moments. And so again, he's saying pride is not synonymous with a quiet faith. Humility is. The puffer fish is able to inflate himself to sizes many times his normal size. And I've got a puffer fish here for you. He's just beginning to blow himself up. In fact, he gets so much bigger. And when he gets bigger, those little spines get even spinier. And what you need to know about the puffer fish is he has a toxin on the inside of him so that any fish that eats him gets sick. And in fact, this toxin is so potent that it's 1,200 times more potent than cyanide. And one little puffer fish has enough toxin in him to kill 30 people. So, I mean, this is a very, very, by the way, no known antidote either. So the puffer fish, you don't go about eating the puffer fish. I mean, he's telling you, I'm prickly, don't eat me anyway. But you don't want to be eating the puffer fish. Puffer fish represents humans with pride. They blow themselves up many times their normal size, trying to be something. And usually, pride is also this toxin, because pride makes its way into businesses or families or churches or relationships. And pride is always toxic to those places where it goes. And so, again, David is saying something to us. If you want a simple faith, a quiet faith, humility is the path that you want because, again, pride is the enemy of this. In fact, that's who I really want to quote right now, John Stott, one of the greatest theologians, in my opinion, in the 20th century. But he said this: pride is your greatest enemy, humility is your greatest friend. And so in order to exercise a quiet faith, we would want to be individuals who are exercising humility. But he goes on and he says, in order to exercise this kind of quiet faith, I also am an individual that doesn't have, he says, haughty eyes. And again, I had to kind of look that up this week because that's not a word we use all the time, haughtiness. I mean, maybe I've heard that in the past and I can hear it within context of a sentence, but what does he really mean by this? Haughtiness is blatantly being disdainful or proud. It's a word used in the Bible. Every time it's used in the Bible, it's used in an evil sense, and it's used as arrogant or disdainful or setting yourself up above others. And it's oftentimes used, if you're haughty, it's oftentimes used in contrast to humble. And so David says, I am not haughty. I have no desire to be haughty. I want to be the humble person. And haughtiness is something that he says is something that is really focusing up on appearances. It's trying to compare or compete, or it's never contented is another thing about haughtiness because it's always wanting more. The illustration I want to give for this today is from Marie Antoinette. And I've got Marie Antoinette's picture up here. Some of you know the story behind her because she was the queen, actually, of France during the French Revolution. And I didn't really realize this until I looked a little bit this week, but the French Revolution was shortly before the American Revolution, which was in 1776, as we know. And Marie Antoinette was this person who was attributed with the saying, let them eat cake. Now, again, it's debated about whether or not she actually said that, but more on that in just a second. But when we say that saying, let them eat cake, what do we mean? Well, there were a lot of people that were very poor in France at that time. And she was told, reportedly, hey, there's a lot of people that have no money. They can't eat, they can't even buy any bread. And so she reportedly retorted, well, if they can't buy bread, let them eat cake. And again, you can see the play on words there. And it's extreme. And it's like, if I can't afford bread, how am I going to afford cake? And so again, that was her reply. Now again, she may or may not have said that, but here's the point. It's legendary precisely because it captured how detached and disdainful she and the aristocracy were of the common people. She had no ears to hear the people's plight and how bad it really was for individuals in her country at that moment. And anytime you are exercising a set of haughtiness or a side of haughtiness, then you are losing sight with individuals who have less. You're losing sight with common people in order that you might exercise out of your kind of realm or your station of life. And David says, even though I'm king, I'm not doing that. I don't want to lose track of where the people really are, and I don't want to operate out of a sense of haughtiness. Church, we never can do that. We have always got to be individuals who are very well aware of the people around us, very well aware of the struggles and the problems that they face, ready to step in, ready to love, ready to forgive, ready to guide. And that's part of what it means to be individuals who are humble. It's part of what it means to be individuals who are caring for God and God's cause and God's people in this way. And so haughtiness is something that we would never obviously celebrate. Now again, I want to remind you, this is David. He's king. I mean, he's able to do quite a lot, and he's a very capable guy. But he's saying the very first thing that I am doing is I am wanting to have a quiet faith. And my quiet faith is one that begins with humbleness. All right, the second one. If I want a quiet faith like David, then I'm going to be having a faith that is what I'm saying is anchored. And once again, he doesn't go about saying, oh, by the way, I'm anchored. My faith is an anchored faith. No, he goes again to the opposite, and he says, I don't concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. And so what does David mean here? Does David mean like, well, I've really never accomplished much, and well, I never really reach for too many things. I just kind of always play it safe. If you know anything about David's life, that's not true. And so David can't be saying that. That's not what he means by I don't interest myself or I don't take an interest in matters too great for me. So what does he mean? David says, I'm not preoccupied with my own greatness. I'm not preoccupied with that. And if you look at the arc of David's life, I think he's right. If you look at the way that he interacted with people and circumstances, I think David, for the most part, was a guy that was saying, I'm just kind of doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing and let the chips fall where they may. Now, again, he had his moments. We all know that. But David is one who's preoccupied with the greatness of somebody else, and it's the greatness of God. And so I would argue that David doesn't fall for the Tower of Babel and the syndrome of the Tower of Babel. What's the syndrome of the Tower of Babel? Well, Tower of Babel is set up, and they are building a city that's reaching to the heavens, and they are doing that in order to make their name great. And they are struck down by God. Their language is confused. Their ingenuity halted because God says, that's not the right way to go about this. I will make your name great, but I don't want you to make your name great. And so he confounds them in that way. And David is saying, I'm one who is anchored. I'm one who is rightly asking, who is the great one here? Who is the one that deserves greatness and glory and honor? And it's not me, it's the one that has given me this station in life. And so David is saying, I'm operating out of an anchored faith, rightly viewing myself and rightly viewing God. David in many Psalms talks about the greatness of God. I've got one here, Psalm 145, verse 3. Great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. His greatness no one can fathom. And that just comes again out of the very heart of David. And he's saying, I want to point you to the one who's truly great, and it's not me. Even though, again, he's king and he has got this tremendous station in life. Let me tell you a little bit of story here again about this whole idea of being anchored and knowing where greatness really is. In his book, Humilitas, Pastor John Dixon describes the humility of Sir Edmund Hillary. And I've got a picture of Sir Edmund Hillary in 1953. And he had just summited Mount Everest, was one of the first guys that did that. And he's next to his good friend and his Sherpa, the guy who was his guide, Tenzin Norgay, who is from Nepal. Sir Edmund Hillary, after he summited Mount Everest in, again, 1953, I think I said 58, but it was 1953, and he summits it, and as a result of that, he is given all of these accolades. He's from New Zealand, and he is knighted in New Zealand as a result of summiting Mount Everest. He's also given in 1985 New Zealand's highest commission to India, Nepal, and Bangladesh as one of their ambassadors. And so, again, he's back and forth to the country quite a lot. In 1995, he received Britain's highest award, the Order of the Gaiter, that only 24 people have ever received. So, again, what I'm trying to say is this is an important guy. He's really recognized for his climbing exploits, and his good friend Tenzin Norgay is right at his side, and he's friends with him, and he goes back and visits him regularly. Well, he goes to the base camp back in Mount Everest, and there are some individuals that note who he is. So they pick him out, and they're going, that's Sir Edmund Hillary right over there. And so they're like, they run over and they're like, oh, hey, could we get a picture with you? Now, he was not summiting the mountain that day. He was just at base camp visiting the people that he loves and kind of taking in the moment. And he says, sure, I'll take a picture with you. And so just to make the moment just really pregnant, they said, here's a pickaxe. Hold the pickaxe so that we can take a picture with you. And so he dutifully takes the pickaxe and holds it in his hand. And they're gathering around him for a photograph. And there's another guy that's getting ready to march on his way up the mountain and notices the picture about ready to be taken, rushes over and doesn't recognize that it's Sir Edmund Hillary. And he says to him, you're holding the pickaxe wrong. Hillary says nothing. He lets him adjust the pickaxe in his hand, takes his admonition and just says, oh, okay. And proceeds with taking the photograph. Now, again, we look at that and say, if you had only known, and who knows, as he's like 10 steps away, somebody probably comes up to him and says, guess who that was? I mean, he hikes circles around you, all right? I think he knows what to do with a pickaxe. But he steps off, and Sir Edmund Hillary is there. And because he takes the moment so in stride, our estimation of him goes up. And maybe our estimation of the other guy goes down a little bit, right? It's like, if you'd only known. Here's the point I want to make. Sir Edmund Hillary knows his station in life. He knows what he's about. And he's got no score to settle here. Let the guy adjust the pickaxe. Big deal. I know who I am. I know what I've accomplished. I know even what's been granted to me as a result of that. And I'm okay. That is what it means to have, again, this settled or anchored faith. It's one in which your feet are firmly on the ground. It's one in which you know who you are. And you know the greatness of God. You know the greatness of God is really the thing that matters most in life. And so David is telling us something about what it means to have a faith that is so settled, so anchored, so at home. I wonder if you often feel that way. I wonder if that's you today. I wonder if you are saying, I feel anchored in my faith. I know who God is. I know what he's accomplished. I know his is the glory and the honor. And I'm a servant underneath him because there's great, great freedom in that. In fact, I would argue more freedom in that than trying to be something that you're not. And so David operates out of this quiet faith that just knows where it is. It's as if he's found his place in life, and it's under the mighty and caring hand of God, and everything else is window dressing compared to that. Well, there's one more thing I want you to see. Third, quiet faith is calm. And in this case, David says exactly what he means here. He says, I am quieted and calmed, or I have quieted and calmed myself. And that is interesting play on words, because David is very active in this. I mean, look at that verse again. He's saying, I have calmed and quieted myself. And I don't know why, but as I read that, I would have expected him to say, I have been. It's happened to me. But he's saying here, I'm very active. I'm doing this. I'm quieting myself. And so again, I think David is saying this. I'm taking these actions. I'm taking these steps to quiet myself because God has created the atmosphere for me to do that. He's not unaware of that. But he is saying, I am taking this action very dutifully. And at this point, he gives a gorgeous metaphor for what his quietness actually looks like. And David chooses the metaphor of a weaned child. He's saying, I am like a weaned child. And let me explain a little bit more of that. We just got done with Vacation Bible School. Are those slides still on the deck? Good. Just a few moments to see what the Vacation Bible School looked like this week. I've got a couple of them here. Eric with one of our actors, or one of the character, the kids that are just kind of celebrating here. The next one, I've got, more of them that are just engaging everybody and are on all point. And then one more. Oh, the littlest ones. That was a great picture. And one more. The games that kids played. I mean, that was just on all cylinders. One of the things that happened during this week, we had kids of all ages that were a part of Vacation Bible School. And one of our youngest kids that was with us this week was little Santiago Maya. Many of you know that Santiago is Emily and Bernardo's son, and I don't know if they're with us today, but anyway, it was a favorite moment of mine to see little Santiago, and he was just getting on with it and having a good time. But one of the moments that will always stick with me was it was an afternoon or late morning. It wasn't the afternoon; it was a late morning. We had been there for a while. Santiago had been fed and been changed, and he was in this pouch, here's Emily right here. He's in this pouch on Emily right here. And I came by and I said, oh boy, it looks like he's out. She goes, oh yeah, he is conked out. Santiago at that moment represents what David is saying. He had no care in the world. He was completely at home, tranquil, completely satisfied in that moment. Everything he needed had been provided for, and he was just in this deep slumber next to the mother that loves him very much, and it creates this security really for him. And that is the picture that David wants us to see. Now again, David goes a little bit further in the metaphor, and I want to kind of explain what he says, because he says, I'm not just like a child that is secure and safe, but I'm actually like a weaned child. And so it's like, David, I don't know if I expected you to say that, because a weaned child doesn't need that closeness, because it doesn't need mom's milk anymore. A weaned child is past that. And so, David, why are you using that as part of the metaphor? I'm not sure I'm getting it. In ancient culture, in Israel, it was a big deal when a child was weaned. Usually happening maybe, somewhere a year, 2 years old, 3 years old, somewhere in that realm. But what it represents when a child is weaned is that the child is now viable. It means that they've made it past so many things in early childhood that can take life. And in the ancient world, there were a lot of things that took babies' lives. And so finally, when you got to that spot, it was like, wow, let's have a celebration. You're eating solid food, and your likelihood of living goes way up. And so David is saying, I'm like this weaned child because, somehow I've made it. I'm out of the danger zone, and I'm now in a safe spot. And that's what I feel like with God. I'm in the safe spot. Just as a little aside, I was in Haiti years ago, and I was with some people that had babies. And I said, what's the name of your baby? And they said, baby. And I said, no, I don't think we're communicating here. What's the name of your baby? Baby. I said, explain to me, what do you mean? They said, this baby is still young, and this baby is still nursing. And so we don't name our babies until they're a year old because we lose so many of them. I was like, whoa. That's what David's talking about here. He's saying, I have reached the spot where I am secure, I'm safe, I'm calm, because I am in the hands of God. Years ago, again, I was looking at this passage and just thinking about it. And again, this idea of feeling as though we are at home, feeling as though we are in the moment. We're just so secure and safe. And there's other times other than a weaned child that we feel like that. Maybe on a winter night, you get that blanket and you wrap it around you, you get a little closer to the fire, and you just feel that moment of safety and security. Maybe it's a summer day. Here we are coming into summer, and it's that day where you just kind of a lazy afternoon, and you make your way underneath a tree and you fall asleep in a nap. That's the idea of, I think, what David's trying to get across to us. Maybe it's the feeling of being truly loved by somebody, truly accepted by somebody, and you know that moment, how important that is, how good that feels, and everything else can kind of melt away as you just take that moment in. That's what David says is quiet faith, and that's the center of his faith with God, being calmed and settled. Well, that's the way David describes this, and he's going to end this psalm with an encouragement and an exhortation. And here's his exhortation for all of Israel. This is the last verse in this psalm. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. And we have to remind ourselves what hope is. Hope is a confident expectation of the character and the previous history of God. So if you've watched God operate very much and you've seen the history of what he's done in your life and in the ancient Israelites' lives or the early church's lives, then that gives you confidence on what he's going to do in the future. His character as well as his accomplishments are what you're putting your confidence in when you have hope. And so he's saying, hope Israel, hope in God. Make him the one that is your lasting contentment, your lasting hope, and make sure your faith is really focused or anchored within him. Now again, I would imagine here today we have a number of people that maybe, I don't know, you just came with somebody else, you're here today, and you said, yeah, I'm going to try out church. And you might say, in all honesty, Pastor, I'm not sure I've ever exercised any kind of faith. That's a big word, and I'm not even sure I know what that even means. Faith is a fancy word in the Bible that really means trust or confidence. And every time we place our trust or confidence in something, we're saying, I'm relying upon that. And that's what God is saying in the scriptures is, I want you to have confidence or trust in my son, in me, but through my son. And my son is the one who came and lived a perfect life. He was perfectly obedient. God would say, I the Father, never disappointed me, never let me down. And he came into the world not just to live a perfect life, but actually to die a perfect death. And that's what he does. He dies a perfect death. Why? Why would this king of majesty, why would he come in for a death? That seems so backwards. Why would he do that? And he comes to die in order that he might do two things. He might offer a lasting forgiveness perpetually for all who come to him. All of the things that you've ever done, all the things you've ever said, all the things you've ever thought that have been untoward and have been displeasing to God are now addressed through Jesus. And he comes not only to forgive, but he also comes to renew. And so he comes to make new. He comes to make his way into the spots of your life that are the most broken and say, I want to provide a balm of healing. I want to provide renewal. I want to provide a new you. And so he comes to do both of those amazing things. And every time we're coming to God and we're saying, I wish to embrace your son, that's what we're admitting that he can do and that we need. And that's what it means to have faith in Jesus. If that's you today, and you're saying, boy, Pastor, that's the first time somebody's kind of explained that to me. And you would want that. It's as simple as receiving that from God. That's what he's offering through Jesus. And you're simply responding and saying, I wish to do that. And we call that, again, prayer. It's talking to God, but that's the way you exercise this, is through faith and prayer. And so I'm going to lead you in that right now. For the rest of us today, what I want you to hear is there's a great side to a quiet faith. A faith that's settled, contented, that's not trying to be more than it is, and that brings great glory and honor to God when you arrive at that space of your life. And so you're asking God, would you create that in me? Because I want to be that person. Just like David, I want to be that person, not because I can't accomplish things, but because the most important things that are accomplished are, again, provided by God, and I wish to have those. Father, I thank you again for this simple passage, one that resonates throughout all of history because of its simplicity and because of its focus. It brings us down to the right things. It says, Lord, the greatest things are the things that you have done that make you great. And somehow we find ourselves under you. I pray, Lord, for individuals today that are with us that maybe for the very first time are saying, I wish to have Jesus. I wish to place my confidence and my trust in him, And I want him to do in me what he's done through billions of peoples throughout history, and that is come in and renew and come in and forgive and make new. And I need that. I want that. And so I'm opening the door of my heart even right now. Father, thank you again for this beautiful passage. We want to be people who have that heart posture of a quiet or a settled faith before you. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.